Do you ever feel that your shots are just sitting up, waiting to be attacked by your opponent? You're hitting the ball cleanly, but they're just not landing deep enough to put them under pressure. Well, today I'm breaking down real match footage using SwingVision and showing you why your shots are landing short, but more importantly, how to fix it. And so stick around for 3 game-changing tips that will help you to hit your shots deeper, allowing you to control the point and to take your game to the next level. Let's get into it. So I've been looking through footage of 4 different players that all have the same issue with their match play. They're dropping the ball short and giving their opponent far too many opportunities to attack. And as a result of this, they end up playing defensively, and when they get chances to attack, they often make mistakes as they're desperate to hit a winner. Like all the other videos in this Fixing My Followers series, I've picked 4 players of slightly different standards. But I would say that this time round, the level of player is slightly higher than some of my previous videos. But regardless of your level, hopefully you'll resonate with at least one of them, as I'm going to give each of them one tip to help them to improve their depth. Now we're going to start off by looking at footage from Joel's match, as this is probably the most simple fix, but probably the most common mistake I see players making when it comes to depth. And although this tip may sound super simple, it's something that you should really consider in your own tennis. And it's actually having the intention to hit it deep. When looking through Joel's match, it seemed as though Joel didn't really intend on his shots landing deep. It looked like his intention was to keep the ball in play, which is a good tactic. However, if your intention is only to keep the ball in play, the chances are lots of your shots are going to land short. And in turn, your opponent is going to have far too many opportunities to attack. They're going to feel like they're in control of every point of the match. Now, I know this sounds presumptuous, as I don't know what Joel was thinking when he was playing this match, but if you watch these points, you'll notice that he's swinging quite slowly. Normally that means the intention is just to keep the ball in play and to wait for your opponent's mistake. And don't get me wrong, this is a great tactic against some players, but to take your tennis to the next level and to be able to challenge slightly stronger players, depth is key. And the biggest reason I'm starting with this tip is there's no point in working on anything technical if your intention is wrong. A lot of the time when I'm working with players and they're hitting the ball short, before I jump to conclusions and try to change anything technical within their game, I simply ask them to hit deeper. And 9 times out of 10, they can. And so next time you're playing, whether you're training, hitting with a sparring partner, or playing a match, try and have the intention of hitting the ball deep. Just by doing this, you will start to hit the ball deeper. And if anything, you'll have more awareness of where your shots are actually landing, as lots of the time, players that are focusing on just keeping the ball in really don't realize when their shots are dropping short. I like to do this when I'm warming up for a practice session. During my rallies, rather than just trying to hit the ball straight to my partner, I focus on making sure all of my shots land past the service line. And you can take this a step further by adding targets at the back of the court. But tip number 1 is to make sure that you intend to hit the ball deep. Now you might be listening to this tip thinking, well, of course I've got the intention of hitting it deep, but I'm still struggling. This is where tip number 2 and 3 come in. As I said, when analyzing the footage of these players, I was using the SwingVision app. And what's really good for depth is checking out the heat maps. As you can see here, this is one of my matches and it shows me exactly where my shots landed on the court. It breaks down my shot type, so as you can see, forehands are green and backhands are orange. So I can really see where my shots are landing, whether they're deep or not, and if one of my shots is landing shorter than the other. As you'll notice on this example, my forehands were definitely landing more consistently deep than my backhands, which are shown in orange. And overall, you can see that 72% of my shots landed deep, which I'm quite happy with. You can also see your hitting position, so where you are making contact with each shot, which is going to come in handy when I'm talking about the next players that I'm reviewing in this video. As well as these heat maps of where your shots are landing and where you're making contact with the ball, you can also get really detailed match stats. And if all of that wasn't enough, you can also see yourself in action, which is such a powerful tool for your development. Watching footage of yourself playing, especially in match play, really reveals your weaknesses. And as I always say, you very rarely play how you feel you played. And so if you're interested in taking your game to the next level, check out the SwingVision app. They're currently offering my followers a free swing stick worth $100 when signing up to the Pro subscription. So check out the link in the description. But for now, let's get back to the video. Next up, we're going to look at a match from Nicholas, who, as you can see, is a classic classic clay court player. He hits with tons of topspin and loads of height over the net. The reason this game style is great for playing on clay courts is the surface is much slower and the ball bounces higher than other surfaces, meaning that heavy topspin with arc over the net really kicks up high, making for awkward contact points for your opponent. And big flat shots are less effective as the ball bounces and sits up for your opponent. Clay court players are known to be super consistent. It's a war of attrition. They're waiting for their opponent to make a mistake. In this match alone, the players hit more than 1,200 shots. But in Nicholas's case, a whopping 45% of his shots landed within the service boxes. And even with Nicholas's amount of topspin, it's still not enough to keep your opponent under pressure, as every time that ball drops into the service boxes, it gives his opponent a chance to attack. And even if that opponent's not hitting a winner, it's going to put him under tons of pressure. The downside of hitting with heavy topspin is the more spin you put on the ball, the slower the ball travels. And that equates to much shorter landing shots. And so my advice for Nicholas is not to change his game style completely. The consistent game style is his identity. But what I would say is by adjusting the swing path ever so slightly to reduce the amount of spin on each forehand would make his shots heavier. Currently, Nicholas's swing path is very low to high. It's pretty much vertical, meaning that all the racket head speed is going into making the ball turn and none of it is sending the ball forwards. Now, as I say, we don't want Nicholas's swing to become flat, but somewhere in between is going to make his shot far heavier and far tougher to deal with. Ideally, we'd like this sort of trajectory here. I'm still hitting heavy, I'm still hitting a lot of spin, but that ball is traveling far deeper. I honestly think that if Nicholas took a tiny bit of spin off his forehand, he'd get far more out of it. And so if you're a player like Nicholas that loves to hit with topspin, play around with the amount of spin you're putting on the ball. And understand that if you want to be super consistent, then heavy topspin is great. But if you want to hit with more damaging strokes, sometimes flattening it out ever so slightly can make a big difference. Again, like I said with Joel, if I asked Nicholas to hit it deeper, he probably would. His intention may not have been to hit deep at all. And so by starting with that, he may naturally flatten out his swings anyway. Now, some of my eagle-eyed subscribers may have spotted that Nicholas was playing with quite an extreme grip, which is pretty standard for clay court players as they hit with that heavy topspin game style. But the grip that you use really does impact your swing path and which swing path feels more comfortable to you. A full Western grip, for example, putting your knuckle on the bottom bevel of the racket, is far more suited to hitting heavy topspin than hitting a flat shot. And at the other end of the spectrum, if you've got an Eastern forehand grip, flat shots are very easy, but hitting with heavy topspin becomes a little bit tougher. Now, you can still hit topspin with an Eastern grip, and you can flatten out a shot with a full Western grip. However, it does make it slightly more difficult. As you'll see, our next player here, Jeffrey, he hits with a very similar grip to Nicholas. However, he does change his swing path from time to time to flatten out his shots. But although this does help him to hit faster and deeper, it also equates to a lot more unforced errors. You'll notice that Jeffrey hits the net tape quite a lot because he's using that Western grip, which closes your strings over the top of the ball. When he tries to flatten it out, that ball goes down into the net. And so although I don't recommend grip changes too often in my videos, as it's a long process and I like to guide my players through this process, if these players did adjust their grip ever so slightly more towards a semi-Western grip, they'd have slightly more success. Nicholas would be able to reduce the amount of spin on his shots, helping him to hit heavier, and Jeffrey would be able to find more of a balance between his high, heavy topspin shots and his low, flatter ones. But the real reason I wanted to mention Jeffrey in this video is big shout out to his variety. Out of all of the players that I've reviewed so far, he hits with the least consistent shots in the best way. You really don't know what you're going to get with him. He was serve and volleying, he was drop shotting from behind the baseline, he was hitting moon balls, he had everything. And there's a lot to be said for mixing things up and making it awkward for your opponent. But this underarm serve was a highlight for me. Moving on to our last player, Jesse. As you can see, he hits a great ball and has the potential to hit the ball deep consistently. However, just like the others, he did end up dropping the ball short too often. And this wasn't down to his swing path, but down to his timing. He would often miss-hit the ball slightly, hitting it off center or sometimes even shanking it. This was less about his racket work and more about his footwork. As you'll notice when Jesse's playing, he stays pretty tight to the baseline. He moves laterally from side to side, but when that ball comes to him faster and deeper, he has very little space and very little time to prepare his racket, usually resulting in him hitting the ball late and in turn short. This links quite closely with my return of serve fixing my followers video. And the key is to really make sure that you're moving onto each shot rather than moving out to each shot. And what I would suggest to Jesse is, although it's great to be tight to the baseline when you're hitting the ball, try to sit a little bit further back so you have space to move onto the ball. I'm not talking Medvedev style, just a meter behind the baseline would give you that extra room to move onto the ball diagonally. When you're only moving laterally across the baseline, there's no room to get body weight transfer going forwards. And that body weight transfer alone could be sending your ball deeper. But it will also improve your timing if you start a little bit further back. What I'd recommend is visualizing a marker about a foot behind the baseline and trying to get back behind that after each shot. This will allow you to move forwards at a diagonal to your shot before recovering. Picturing this V shape for your movement will really help you to set yourself behind the ball well. But I love how Jesse is taking the ball early, and we don't want to take that away from him. The key is just to make sure that you start a little bit further back so that you have room to take the ball on and to win the collision, rather than the ball putting you under pressure. And so if you're tired of hitting the ball short, start off with your intention. Make sure that you prioritize depth when it comes to your training and your matches. Once you've prioritized depth, if you're still hitting the ball short, think of one of those two other tips. It may be your swing path that's letting you down, in which case adjust the amount of spin you're putting on the ball to change the depth. Equally, it could be your positioning and your spacing. If you're not giving yourself enough space behind the ball, you're not going to be able to step in on it, and in turn could be missing out on some extra depth. Thanks as always for watching through to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the thumbs up button and drop a comment with which of those tips you're going to be practicing next. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.